Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Dead Man Walking podcast. I am your host, repeatedly dead Fred, author of the medical trauma memoir, The Summer I Died 20 Times, which is what actually happened to me. And that's how I got this supposedly cool nickname, repeatedly dead Fred. Today, I am with Abe Silverman. And Abe is a fascinating gentleman. He's the son of Holocaust survivors. And that's just one minor blip on a very, very impressive resume. Probably what's most impressive to me is how somebody who I think is 84 still looks like he's 52. So, Abe, welcome to the podcast.
Okay, I've lost your video. I think I'm getting it back. Okay, so I'd like to correct one important point or error that you made, and that's my age.
Okay.
Okay, I'm 82. I was born
Okay.
1942, and it's difficult enough to admit to being 82, never mind
Mhm.
80. Okay,
Well, you still look like you're 52. So, whatever
well,
you credit that to, it's pretty amazing.
they're good genes. Good genes, right?
So, you still have a full time job, I understand. You're the public affairs manager for B'nai Brith of Alberta.
Yes, I'm now in my fifth year working
Mhm.
for Abe Canada. I'm grateful that they came to me and asked me to join them. I'd been a member of their national board for over 30 years. So when I sold my business and was trying to decide what to do for the rest of my life, they came along and offered me work, and it's important work, advocating for Israel and advocating for the Jewish community in Canada, and doing multicultural work, serving on the Alberta Government Anti-Racism Advisory Council. This is all activities that I'm blessed to be part of, and it's keeping my mind focused and young, and I'm grateful to be working full time.
So, for those in the audience who might have heard of B'nai Brith, aren't fully aware of the scope of B'nai Brith, it's probably the preeminent human rights advocacy group in the world. It's not just Jews that they advocate.
Correct. In 2025, we will be celebrating 150th anniversary.
Wow.
And you're right, we are the preeminent human rights organization in Canada advocating for uh, re- religious groups, cultural groups, people of color, indigenous groups. We are through our League of Human Rights, we are human rights advocates for all.
Awesome. So, when Myles Shane, who connected us, was telling me a bit about your background, he said you're sort of like Indiana Jones combined with Han Solo from Star Wars. And you've done a little bit of everything and a lot of it in the aircraft world. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I've never been compared to Indiana Jones, but I love the comparison.
Mhm.
Uh, so if that's the comparison, I must say I'm honored. Yes, so I was born at the height of the Holocaust in a Jewish ghetto in Iași, Romania, in March of 1942. My father had been captured and sent to a slave labor camp 3 months before I was born. My mother was taken in by a family uh, in a two-room shack with a dirt floor where 16 other people were taken in as well. 35,000 Jews were crowded in an area that was before the war or before the ghettoization of that area. Uh, they were cramped into an area where 25,000 Jews lived. When we were liberated by the advancing Soviet army in 1944, there was 11,000 of us still alive. Almost 25,000 died of typhus and hunger and shootings and beatings. And my dad, who was in Basarabia in slave labor, also survived. We were reunited in late 1944.
Amazing. God has a plan for everyone.
Yes, it's quite. I'm trying to write my memoirs, and I've chosen a title that I think is very appropriate, Bashert. And of course, you know what that means, meant to be. And my being here, sitting with you on this podcast, was Bashert.
I think so. So you somehow went from Romania to Saskatchewan.
Yes.
I guess you took a
So,
boat to Nova Scotia or something.
so we escaped out of Romania in 1947. My mother, my father, myself, and a 1-year-old who was born in 46 after the war. And we found ourselves in a DP camp in Vienna waiting for passage to Palestine. But because of British embargoes, we weren't able to leave for Palestine. In 1948, when Israel became a state, we were moved to Bremen by the Jewish Agency to get on board a ship to the newly reconstructed and reinvented ancient Jewish state of Israel. While we were going through routine medical testing, it was discovered I had tuberculosis. I was 6 years old. I wasn't allowed to enter Israel. Israel was not equipped to deal with immigrants who had highly contagious diseases. So I was sent at the age of 6 to Switzerland to a convent that was also a sanatorium by French nuns, where I spent 6 months being treated for TB. While I was there, my parents and my little brother went back to Vienna. And while they were in Vienna, my father's aunt, who had arrived in Canada in 1907 and lived in Bushja, she first daughter, Silverman's Furrier, she found my mom and dad through the Canadian Red Cross in Vienna and applied for us to come to Canada. We arrived in Canada on Pier 21 Halifax on January 23rd, 1949.
That's amazing. I've never actually met anybody who has had tuberculosis. I don't even know if it exists anymore.
Well, I have my x-rays show clearly that I have tuberculosis. I have scarred lungs.
Yeah. Has that affected you in any way as an adult?
Uh, I suffered probably, well, all men suffer terribly when they get a flu or a cold. That's not unusual. But I think I suffer maybe a little more when uh, a flu or a cold or bronchitis enters my lungs. I think the damage that was done, I think, has a greater effect on me than someone with healthy.
But you've become a pilot and you're flying non-pressurized uh, cabins at altitude, and you seem to be able to breathe. I think.
Well, yes, you're right. I'm a pilot. I have 4,000 hours of, was pilot in command, 1,200 local hours on boats. And you're right, much of my flying was at lower altitudes, so oxygen wasn't required. But in those rare cases where I was flying over mountains or what have you, it was nothing to strap on the oxygen mask, and I dealt with it very well. So whatever damage was done to my lungs did not, first of all, affect me to the extent that I wasn't able to pass a Transport Canada medical that I had to pass every year. Of course, now I can't anymore, so I legally fly. But yeah, the flying I did was not affected by my TB at very.
So we go back to a little bit about your, I guess, Indiana Jones and Solo persona. I understand you were captured in Africa while doing some aid work.
Well,
Get
no,
that correct?
I wasn't captured. I'd met a young African from Angola. He was Canadian born but lived in Angola at a energy conference in Calgary several years ago, and he invited me to come to Angola because there was a lot of airplanes sitting at the Luanda airport that had been confiscated by the government at the time, and they wanted to sell those airplanes. So I had a Chechnyan uh, agent in Johannesburg at the time. So I made arrangements to fly to Johannesburg. I met my agent, and we tried to get a flight into Luanda, a commercial flight. But at that time, the civil war was going on between the government at the time, the UNITA, that was supported by the Cubans. So flying in commercially was risky because we never know when we'd be able to get out. So I chartered a jet at the Lanseria Airport in South Africa, and we flew. Oh, however, let me back up. When I consulted with my agent, who had lived in South Africa for several years, about flying into Angola, I made mention of the fact that we should probably get visas. And he said, no, if you're flying from South Africa to Angola, you don't need a visa. Well, he was very wrong, because the minute we landed, we were met by customs agents and immediately thrown into jail. And if you've never been in a jail in Luanda, Angola, let me tell you, never want to be in a jail in Luanda, Angola.
Well, I've never been in a jail, period. So
Good for you.
so
Well,
what are some of the highlights and lowlights of being in jail in Angola?
for one thing, it seems that the minute you fly into Angola, you come down with a serious case of tourista. And an Angola jail does not have the best bathroom facilities. As a matter of fact, in my experience, probably the worst. So luckily, I only spent 11 hours in jail. Felix's father-in-law, who was a general in the Angolan army, came and rescued me, and my Chechnyan representative and our pilots out of jail for 11 years later.
It's amazing they didn't take the plane you chartered.
Well, we were then under protection of the Angolan government. Colonel Bonga, Felix's father, was highly placed, and we, in his hands, we were safe.
Amazing to have friends in high places.
It's important to have friends in that. It's not what you know, it's who you know in the end.
So do you have any other adventures that sort of went awry similar to those?
Oh, yes. I had an adventure in Larnaca, Cyprus, with an airplane that supposedly belonged to a captain of Beirut Airlines, and it turned out that that airplane had all kinds of money owing against it. And it's a long and convoluted story that wound up almost seeing my son in jail in Cyprus, but I got him out of there in time. But we eventually got it straightened out. But this Lebanese captain, he was very. Let me put it this way: whatever he did, it was not intentional, but whatever he did put me and my son in jeopardy. Cyprus. It was my career in aviation was full of many exciting moments and many terrifying moments. My company carried a $5 million kidnap insurance policy on me because many of the countries I visited, of course, kidnapping was always concerned.
Mhm. So you never had to exercise that policy, thankfully.
I was never kidnapped. No.
Okay. So your aircraft business, you were a buyer and seller of aircrafts and sort of a salvager, I guess, salvage for parts.
Well, we were an all-encompassing aviation company. We did many things. One of the things we did was aircraft recovery for insurance companies and the Transportation Safety Board. I bought and sold airplanes all over the world, including military. I bought 39 airplanes in Israel, many of them military airplanes. Uh, and of course, we did sell aircraft parts as well that we often got from airplanes that we salvage. Yes.
Mhm. It's one of those things that the average person, you go on a plane and you don't really give any thought to how is this aircraft maintained and are they buying used parts to keep it in the air? And I understand the U.S. military is having a bit of that problem with the F-22s because they didn't make as many as they expected to, and they don't have spare parts, and that's one of the reasons they're having to phase it out because they just can't keep them in service. So they needed a guy like you.
Well, if you think about it, and this applies to your car as well, you put a new aircraft into service or your car, you start driving, and a few miles or a few hours later, you're traveling in a airplane or a car full of used parts. Those parts are now used because they've been operated. So in aviation, uh, the control over the use of parts is very stringent. Uh, any parts that are used that go onto an airplane, may it be air transport or general aviation, must be inspected by a licensed aircraft engineer, and that aircraft engineer must sign out that part has been inspected and found to be safe for flights. So, so if you're flying in a 777, chances are that one of the wheels or maybe three of the wheels on that airplane came off another airplane, but they have been inspected and found to be airworthy. So you shouldn't have any concerns.
I suspect anybody watching this episode is now just gonna every time they get on an airplane, they're just gonna start scoping out. Okay, what's original here? What's factory? What's replacement parts?
Well, should have no fear. The rules that have been implemented ensure that airplane is safe to get you to your destination. One of the safest way to travel is in an airplane.
So I'm wondering if you could delve a little bit more into how a very successful businessman sells his business, is in his late 70s. How does he end up going back to work for a human rights organization and being one of the faces of that organization?
So, like I said, when my son and I sold our business and he went on to do other things that he wanted to do, I was, I guess I would have been 77 years old, maybe 76 years old. I knew that I was not going to spend the rest of my life sitting in front of a television or playing golf. I, I've been busy and working all of my life, going back to growing up on a Jewish farming colony in southern Saskatchewan and being on a tractor at the age of 10.
Mm.
I knew that I needed to do something that would satisfy my need to give something back. Canada's been very good to me. I raised 4 children, 7 grandchildren. Now we have 2 great grandchildren, the twins, the joy of my life. And I knew that I needed to do something meaningful. What it was that I was going to do, I wasn't sure, but I was looking at my options. And then, as we've discussed, it was Bashert, the phone rang, and I was offered this position to be the manager of public affairs for B'nai Brith Canada for the Alberta region. I was very familiar with B'nai Brith, having served on the board, national board, for over 30 years. So I jumped at the chance, and I must say I'm delighted to say that I feel productive, I feel useful, and I get up every morning and look forward to doing good work. But I also get up every morning and find myself deeply depressed over what's happening to the Jewish people in Israel. And we are a people under siege, and we have every reason to feel that we are not safe in this world. And if you would have asked me on October the 6th, if after 2,000 years, are we as a people safe in this world, I would have said, Fred, I think, yes, we're finally come to the point where we're safe. October 7th changed all of that. And then, having spent 3 weeks in Israel in November last year, I'm even more convinced now that we are at great risk, and we have now, we're no longer the Jewish the Jews in the staples in the Russian Pale cowering in the corner saying, "Shush, still, be quiet, and maybe the Cossacks will leave us alone." We now fly F-16s over Auschwitz. So we have the means to defend ourselves. However, we can only do so if we stay united and we fight for the survival and the continued prosperous state of the Jewish people, the state of Israel, because without a national homeland, we won't survive. I think
Mhm.
the Holocaust clearly showed that we one day may need to take our violin, and we play violins because you can't carry a piano back, and we will have some place to run to. Me and my family had no place to run to in 1942, 43.
Mhm. So turning that negative into a positive, it's amazing that even though and I rarely talk politics on here, but it seems appropriate that even though the Biden administration really seems to have a problem saying we fully support Israel, Hamas, let the hostages go, Hezbollah knock it off, etc., the U.S. military, with Lloyd Austin, has finally decided to step up the game and take the initiative and help out in a big way.
So, having had a conversation with a former head of Israel military intelligence, it is clear that the perpetrator of all of this chaos in the Middle East and around the world is Iran. Israel does not have the equipment to take out Iran's nuclear program. The Americans do. We need the Americans to take the initiative and put an end to the international chaos that is the result of Iranian belligerency. And I hope that future leaders in the United States recognize the importance of removing the leadership of the Iranians, so peace can come not only to the world but to the Iranian people as well.
Yes, I don't think anybody has a problem with the Iranian people for the most part. It's the people in charge.
We don't have any problems with the Iranian people. We don't have any problems with the Palestinian people. What's going on in Gaza today is not a war between Israel and the Palestinian people. It's a war with a terrorist organization that has created chaos for the Israeli people since 2005. Hamas as an entity can no longer rule a square inch of land on Israeli borders. That is clear, and the job will not be done until Hamas has been degraded so they control no real estate anywhere along Israel's border anymore.
So, Abe, we're almost out of time, unfortunately, because I think we could probably talk for another 5 hours. But as part of B'nai Brith, as a general human rights advocate, do you have a few words of wisdom that you could leave with the audience to, help them figure out the good guys from the bad guys, how to stop being so divided and overreactive politically?
Fred, I do have closing remarks, and it's closing remarks that I use in all of my lectures and presentations. And the remarks are meant to give people hope, and I believe that there is hope. So I'd like to remind everyone that 2024 is nothing at all like the year I was born in 1942. We have come a long way. We've been so successful in so many ways in reducing poverty in the world. We've done so much to bring us together culturally and religiously and ethnically. So we have many reasons to be hopeful. It doesn't mean that the job is done. Far from it. We need to continue on the path of moving towards bringing the world together. We need to put aside our differences that lead to hate, and we will continue to march on to make the world a better place. I have a great hope for my offspring. I think they will inherit a better and better world.
Well said. And thank you, Abe, for coming on and sharing all your thoughts and your story with us. If people want to get a hold of you to have some sort of educational opportunity or have you speak, how do they get hold of you?
So I am honored by anyone reaching out and inviting me to speak to their groups. May it be about what's happening in Israel, my experience as a Holocaust survivor. I charge no fee. I charge no expenses. My presentation is absolutely free. I can be reached at Abe Silverman at B'nai Brith Canada.ca. I can also be reached on my cell 24/6 780 951 0322.
Awesome. Thank you again, Abe. This was just an amazing conversation.
Thank you. Nice meeting you, Fred. I hope we'll get to see each other in person.
Yes, I do too. So, and to the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, share, make some comments, share, do all the positive things. Help us get this podcast out there and have yourself a wonderful week. Bye bye.
Fred.